greatly appreciated the Child Watch. It is a tradition out of CDF that some communities have gotten away from. But I want to frame a bit of why I'm so excited that California still does it, that Shamika was doing it when I came to CDF 4 years ago, because it's an opportunity to pause and turn aside to pay attention to things and to people that don't normally get paid attention to. It is an effort that has been transformative in CDF's history, including in 2005 following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. A Child Watch brought national leadership to that community, brought philanthropic investment into the Gulf Coast, and transformed the way that America's largest philanthropy for children and health, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, did its work. And so one of those comes from a tradition that suggests that you should pay attention even to small beginnings, to be thoughtful about what it means to look deeply at a topic with a group of people who care deeply about it. So I want to thank CDF California. I want to thank the team and all of you who are here as partners, as volunteers, as supporters of this work, to take some time today to lean in, to think deeply, to turn aside, to pay attention to what's going on with our children. Is that all right?
Yes.
I also want to, I'll take a few minutes to frame. I get to have a conversation with one of my dear old friends who's a remarkable leader here in this space, and one of our staff team members who's one of the most remarkable leaders for young people in this community, after I finish talking, so I don't want to talk that long. What I do want to do is to try to situate the moment a bit, where I think we find ourselves in the context of our work at Children's Defense Fund in this unique time over the course of the next 40 or so days, where people are going to be paying attention to lots of issues related to the public, and we want to make sure they're paying attention to children and young people. I do that first and foremost with thanks and appreciation to the state of California for giving me a headache last year. In the middle of the year, we've gone through this remarkable leadership transition. We were kind of working our way through it, and then we had our first new board chair. We went from one board chair who was here in California, Angela Glover-Backwell, who was there in the Bay, to another board chair who had been in California, who had moved to Washington, D.C. Her name, you may know her name is LaFonza Butler. And then the governor decided to give her a new job, which meant I had to get another board chair. Why do I mention all of that? I mention that because we have some remarkable champions who have anchored our work here nationally, who have been grounded here in California for some time. So I want to shine a light and put some thanks on that, with appreciation to Senator Butler, with appreciation to the Education Secretary, Tony Thurman, with appreciation to a new partner, member of our CDF Action Council board, Michael Stubbs, who's long time been a leader with CDF and come up through CDF programs. And so we have these kind of roots, tethers, and ties that help to anchor us here and make some of the work possible to complement the work that the California team is doing here. Earlier you heard a little bit about a leadership development and organizing team that while you get to see and get to partner with folks like Aditi and Millie and others on the team here, and Yasmin, anchoring around the youth justice work and the educational equity work, there also is work that's happening in the national office that gets to touch this community because of leadership development and organizing team. So over the course of the last couple of years, we've had some 20 HBCU students who have had internships with every NBA franchise in the state, and also receiving supports from the national setting to help them in their formation. As we talk about economic mobility as a critical advancement, we also talk about what it means to give real opportunities to young people. And that HBCU MBA fellowship program has been one of those things that's done that. One of the things I'm really excited about happening here has been this integration and intention between the California office and the work with the 10 partner organizations for CDF Freedom Schools across the state to mobilize young people, help them to hear their own voices in policy by hearing their voices and seeing themselves in books, seeing that they can make a difference in the world, and then mobilizing and supporting them to do that through the National Days of Social Action. These are ways that it helps to connect both the national work and the work that is happening here on the ground, so that we can be led by those who are closest to the challenges and to the problems. one of the ways that CDF California has led the national organization out is in this work of youth justice. Interestingly, I actually enjoyed the fact that I kind of came into CDF at a critical moment of movement in 2020, and our California and our New York offices have been trying to push the national setting faster and further as it relates to youth justice for some time. And so we find some of our most powerful work as it relates to youth justice, as it relates to juvenile justice reform, as it relates to facing the criminal legal system here in California and in New York. And we're grateful for that because, while we have offices across the country, the reality is if you miss what's going on in unique places of opportunity, then you miss the opportunity to move the entire organization. And so one of the ways that we have been able to do that, you've heard a little bit about this, I want to name it and then move through, is to say we need to be thoughtful about what an agenda for the future looks like. Last year we honored 50 years of CDF's work, and that's great. But one of the things I was talking about earlier with one of the team members is you can get caught up in generational stuff and do stuff for your generation that don't fit the next generation. I have a 9-year-old and a 19-year-old at home. And stuff that I do for her does not fit for him. So doing things for young people today the way it was done for us doesn't fit either. I was blessed to be one of those young people across the country who did not know that CDF was doing a thing called the Black Community Crusade for Children. But they were reacting to issues that were happening in my household. The kind of community violence that took my brother away from me. Pregnancy before preparation in the way that they wanted to be prepared that came and visited my sisters. And an educational system that wasn't delivering for me in the way that it was delivered for other people. All the stuff that was happening in my house, CDF was reacting and responding to. But there's different stuff happening in the houses of young people today that we've got to respond to in different kinds of ways. Does that make sense? Yeah. I want to push a little bit. It's been a good amount of work. I was last week in East St. Louis on Tuesday, where 1 in 2 children, 48% of all children in East St. Louis live in poverty. That sounds like a lot, but when you put it in a context, in a container where you say, there's just not a lot of resources in East St. Louis at all. They've been absolutely stripped, extracted by corporate interests, dominated by governmental violence in all kinds of ways. You say there's just not the resources to take care of kids here. But on that same Tuesday, if I'd been in California, I couldn't argue that those things weren't here. I couldn't argue that the resources are not here to take care of all of California's children. I could not argue that there were not enough support. I couldn't argue that there's not the intellectual capacity or the brilliance to take care of all of California's children. But when the report came out, it was still the case that 15% of children in the state of California are living in poverty. And I've begun to wrestle and wonder about what it means to know that there's enough but not have enough for children. To understand that it's not just about poverty, it's actually about the inequities, and we didn't just stumble into this. If there are ways in which we have allowed for the aggregation of resources among a few who are wealthy and largely white, and we have kept those resources from others, and that not being something that we stumbled into, but that is an active, ongoing project. An active, ongoing project to take resources from those who are most vulnerable and to give it to those who have the most, who have the least need. That active, ongoing project is something that requires intervention, but it also requires new language. I'm going to talk to the dogs in the park if y'all don't talk back to me. New language. I've come to recognize that there is a reason why people don't want to talk about poverty. Number one, I remember having this conversation with the former faith leader for the White House many years ago. I said, why don't you all talk about poverty? This is progressive administration. Why don't y'all talk about poverty? So one of the reasons we don't talk about poverty is that nobody believes they're poor. No one identifies with the conversation. They always think it's about someone else, even when they live in poverty. But frankly, it shouldn't matter, because the reality is even people who are middle class see themselves as struggling. Our partners at FDFW are leading a conversation about the true cost of living, because the reality is 40% of all Americans still say that they are economically struggling, even if we don't use poor. Poverty allows us to think that it's about someone else and not actually about all of us who are struggling. I'm glad that we're having a conversation about affordability, but we need to renew a conversation about mobility. What do I mean? This idea, the concept, most of the people here, y'all are really thoughtful, intellectual, aware people. And so you're not sold, perhaps, on these inherent and incumbent promises of the American dream. This idea that if you work hard, defer gratification, get an education, you can do better than your parents. That's what was sold to me as a Gen Xer. I know, yes, Gen X, we still live. We still live. I know Gen Z is here, Gen X, we still live. It broke down for millennials who are the most educated generation in American history and still don't do better than their parents. This idea of mobility requires more of us. And so I want to drop my bucket here in these last few minutes. What we have proven over the course of the last 50 years, has been studied by friends at Child Trends and others, is that by expanding the social safety net, by putting more resources into social services and supports, we can lift people out of poverty marginally. Depending on who you believe in that 40-year study, that is somewhere between 5 and 7%. The most significant thing we've done to lift people out of poverty is really expand healthcare and pull those costs off individuals. That's been the most significant driver for the last 2 generations in getting people out of poverty, expanding the social safety net. The theory of the case for most nonprofit organizations, including CDF, anti-poverty organization, is that we need to expand the social safety net. This is the reality. That has proven to be marginally successful, and going forward, we need new tools and new language. We need new tools and we need new language, which means we need new partnerships. In the same ways we've advocated to invest more in community programs, we've advocated to make sure that there's legislation to allocate to the budget. Our fiscal strategies are absolutely necessary, and we must do more. And it has to do with location by location. I won't say all this stuff, but I want to say in New York, we've got to continue to do the work that we're doing. Our New York team is doing remarkable work to lead the largest cash transfer program for young people aging out of foster care in the country. And y'all know something about this. You know about universal basic income. Michael Tubbs was doing this work with guaranteed income projects, and everybody across the country knows because of ARPA about a pilot for some of this program somewhere near you. There's a pilot near you. The question is, will we turn the pilots into programs, and will we have the power to do it? Will the resources actually hit the people? Will you find yourself in a position where you've allocated millions of dollars, but the resources never get to the communities who need them? I recall having this conversation just a couple of years ago with the head of a local foundation here, talking about what it's going to take to have an appropriate strategy for California. Because what I knew was that I didn't know. So I asked people here. One of our first listening sessions for Freedom Schools was in Sacramento, California. One of the deepest conversations about strategy in California was with these philanthropic leaders. And what this leader said, who had a large administrative position in a couple of these counties, he said, you know, California is probably the place where you can get almost any progressive policy passed. The question is, can you actually get the policy to the people? And so our legislative strategies that focus on getting things to the Assembly are right, and if we don't have an administrative strategy to make sure things get executed, then we miss. We may feel good and be able to pat ourselves on the back and have great resumes for what we want to do next, but we would not have made a difference in the lives of people who need us to advocate for them. Part of what we've got to do as we focus is, and I want to test this throughout the day, I want to ask some people about it, I want to continue to test this theory, is that when I read headlines about $88 million that have been allocated to supporting young people that haven't yet got to the young people, I hear a validation for this particular strategy, that we need to lean in on what it takes. And when I hear progressive pilot programs, and I know funding is going away when budgets don't balance, and then we have different conversations, and I get concerned about the chase of people who are announcing 3 years out what offices they're running for. That young people can get lost in the conversation, that some people need to turn some folks aside. Invite people to pause and pay attention to what's actually hitting the ground. And so this is my focus for the next 40-some days. And I've been running. I was telling Jordan, I've been in Columbus, and I've been in Illinois, and I've been in Georgia, and I've been in somewhere else. We forget. All the airports start looking alike. I'll look up sometime after November. But I'm glad that we're at least having a conversation about affordability. I'm glad I can tick off all the stuff in our policy agenda, but I'm glad that we're talking about it in the context of what it means for families and children and not what it means for the GDP. But while we're having that macro conversation, we gotta have a micro conversation as well. We gotta talk about what's actually happening, what's our actual remit, our actual value, our actual outcomes for those who need it most. And if we don't have a clear answer, then we have to be thoughtful about doing something different or moving ourselves out of the way. I'm committed that we're gonna be here, we're gonna be doing the work, we're gonna roll up our sleeves, we're gonna do it in a different way. We'll do it with some different partners, we'll hang out with some different people. And people will challenge that sometimes. They'll have questions about that sometimes. But as long as the federal government is paying $7.25 an hour, and Amazon just went up to 22. I ain't no big Amazon fan. But I grew up on Saturday mornings in my house in Texas watching Westerns. My mom loved Westerns. We watch Westerns and wrestling every Saturday morning after we did our chores. And they had this question about, Frank and Jesse James. Why did Frank and Jesse James rob stagecoaches? Why did they rob trains? Why did they rob banks? Because that's where the money is. The reality is this: we will spend our time and we will do our work appropriately in social services and supports, but we need to expand our partnerships so that we can go where the resources are and bring something back for our children. And that will deploy, that translation will have everything to do with whether we've had an impact in their lives. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you. I look forward to listening throughout the day and having a good conversation in just a couple of minutes.